So as you can see, this year has been set apart for sharing the gospel, and that's why in our worship service this morning, we're doing a 6-part series on what is the gospel from Romans. And the Sunday school is designed to complement that. So when we're sharing the gospel, we want to understand the culture into which we are sharing. So what is the mindset of those who are unbelievers or unchurched, our friends, co-workers, so that in understanding them a little better, we can mold the message, not change the message. Content doesn't change, but how to share it in such a way that they can understand it better, given where they're coming from. So today, we're starting the very first of our culture. So what is our culture like? And the next few weeks, what I did was I took individualism, and I got it from someone else too, but I think individualism is the primary core aspect of what makes our current culture in America unique. So if you had one word to describe what our culture is like, I think it would be individualism, individualistic. So what I did was, in our series on understanding our culture, we're going to look at individualism part 1, and then next week part 2. Once we define it and take a look at it, we're going to look at 4 areas that are impacted by individualism. So today, I think it's only going to be about 25 minutes long. I'm going to try to keep these studies on the shorter side so that at the end, we might have more time to talk, if you want to talk. If you don't, you can talk among yourselves. But I'm going to keep it shorter. My wife keeps telling me there's too much material. And I'm assuming she's right because she tells me she's always right. So I just follow. Yeah, see, I'm right on that one. So we're going to keep it on the shorter side. So today I only have 2 points. Usually I have 4, and I broke it. So point 3 and 4 will come next week. But today the first 2, and it's hopefully it'll resonate. I think it'll resonate more with the younger crowd than the older crowd. Some of the illustrations I'm pulling out. But hopefully you'll get a sense for what individualism is. So point 1, what is individualism? The way I approached this, I took 7 illustrations from our culture. 7 illustrations. So, a lot of times before you hear the verbal definition, it's a little easier to see it and then try to talk of what it means. So the illustrations go from simpler to more complex. So we'll start off with Dennis Rodman. So I'm from Chicago, and no matter how many tattoos he has, he's still my brother because he helped us win 3 championships. Yes. But this is Dennis Rodman. He played for the Bulls, and he was the rebounder, and Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan were the scorers. It was a good time in Chicago sports. But the Chicago Bulls were supposed to play Utah Jazz at one point. And Rodman, if you know anything about him, never has a thought that he doesn't share. So, he talks of everything. And he thought the Mormons were weird. And he went off and started talking about Mormons in Utah. And the NBA thought that discredited the NBA, and they fined him. I don't know how much. And so later on, a reporter came up to him and asked him, "Do you regret what you said? Do you take responsibility?" And this was his response. "I thought we live in a country where we were free to do whatever we want, as long as we did not kill someone." Now, this is Rodman's a way of dramatizing, but this is common, right? We are free. As long as it's not against the law, we're free to do what we want. I have a thought. It's about Mormons, and it may not be a positive comment, but it's my thought, and I get to express it. So that's one illustration. Second illustration comes from this week. So that one of the pastors down south, she's an Afro-American pastor who was once into Beyonce. So she went to the concerts and everything. And then she became a Christian and then became a pastor and then looked at Beyonce and the lyrics and thought, wow, Christians should be listening to this. And so she went out and in the Twitter world and started criticizing, scolding Christians who were into Beyonce. Now, I think I'm saying, well, maybe not. I don't know if there are any Beyonce fans here, but just take it as a non-judgmental statement, okay? So she says, any of you who are going to be on this concert, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And that's pretty strong. How dare you call yourself a Christian, right? Montgomery said in a sermon in which she shared on YouTube and TikTok. Oh, by the way, after this, it went viral, so everybody's looking at her sermons. I should come up with something like that. Okay. I don't care what pastor you got who's okay with it. I don't care what pastor you got that thinks it's cool. I don't care what pastor you got that sings along with the songs because they want some clout. It's pretty strong language, to which there was a response. And you can imagine the response that came from this. Others criticized. They're saying if preachers like her, that made them leave the church because it's so judgmental. One TikToker named Cece said she didn't like when people were attacked for what they chose to enjoy and reprimanded because it doesn't align with their exact belief system. Now notice this, the belief system is external to Cece, and therefore she is not required to follow external authority. We all have the right to follow our own religion. Keep that in mind, our own religion and our spiritual belief. It's our constitutional right to be an individual. But what you all got going to do is take us back to the Salem witch trials, which is a little bit dramatic on the other end of the spectrum. But just keep in mind, the rules for determining what she should enjoy is internal to her. The rules are within you, not outside of you. Illustration number 3. You have all seen this, right? In one form or another. This is the Marlboro Man. It's one of the images in American marketing. So that you don't even need the cigarette, you don't even need the Marlboro. You just see the guy and you think, wow, I want to smoke some Marlboro. So that when you look at the Marlboro image, right? So this is a Marlboro image with no words. See, you know you have succeeded when all you need is a picture with no words to sell your product. But I typed this in. Every image of the Marlboro Man is a solitary individual. I went on Google and typed in Marlboro Man commercial or picture, and every single picture is of an individual, a rugged individual, who's self-sufficient, who can handle any situation, who does not need you. He may allow you to tag along, but he does not need you. It's pretty cool. After this, I kind of want to buy one of those hats. I think that would be great. Why am I looking at you? There's no encouragement. There's no encouragement at all. So the Marlboro Man is a 20th century David. Now that's really interesting. The David it's talking about is the David the statue in Florence, where the biblical David is transformed to this aesthetic, appealing individual, of which the Marlboro Man is a type of. So that the Marlboro Man, right here, art scholars observe that the David is an ideal representing man as a noble, conscious being at home in the universe and master of his own destiny. Doesn't that image come off with the Marlboro Man? He's in control of his world. This egotistical ideal thus became the political symbol for independence, liberty, and justice. I think they're still talking about the David the statue. The Marlboro Man, too, is an egotistical ideal, a noble and conscious being at home in his, he just belongs. He looks good in a hat and a horse. At home in his universe, master of his destiny. Thus, the Marlboro Man has come to symbolize individualism, independence, and capitalism. To understand how these aesthetic processes operate, we must turn to the aesthetics of Aristotle, and he goes on to talk about Aristotelian aesthetics. That's illustration number 3. All you need is that picture. Illustration number 4 of individualism. I'm not saying all of these are bad or good. These are non-judgmental so that we can understand the definition. The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston. Right? Whitney Houston, one of the iconic singers. What a tragic way the last few years of her life. But boy, she has an amazing voice. And she grew up in the church and learned how to sing. A lot of these singers, actually, when you go back, learn to sing in the church. And The Greatest Love of All is one of the songs that We have heard in our younger days and perhaps continue to do so, but I want you to listen to the lyrics here. The lyrics to the song, I believe the children are our future, right? That lyrics should be well known to all of us. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everyone's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I've never found anyone who fulfills my needs. A lonely place to be, and so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. Notice once again the external authority image model. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe. That's strong individualism there. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity. Because the greatest love of all is happening to me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. Illustration number 4. There are 3 books that have been turned into movies. Now, I have not read the books or movies. I know about Eat, Pray, and Love, but this was huge, right? I think the author had traveled through India and different places to find herself, and she was learning what it means to meditate and all of this. I did read this one because John Crocker, he's an amazing writer. And so because of that, I read it. It's about a young boy that gave away all his money and traveled up to Alaska to find himself, I guess, to learn about himself. And then they found his body inside that school bus. They've actually airlifted it out, I think, into a museum or something. But what the author did was he tracked and tried to fill in the pieces of why and how he ended up in this school bus. And the last one is Witherspoon while she's going through one of those 1,000-mile-long trails in America, and she's seeking healing and wholeness through this particular journey. Notice, all of them are alone. And it's an attempt to find yourself. The language of finding yourself is a strong component of individualism. And there are a number of resources that will help you to find yourself, a guide, so that, this is not also our tip, but these are suggestions so that you will learn to find yourself. Actually, it's not finding yourself, it's creating yourself. So I think this is more accurate. It's not like you're going to go to Alaska and finally you find yourself. It's that you are creating yourself through the different images you use to understand yourself and the decisions you make about life. So that you are actually creating yourself. So that would be illustration 4, the language of finding yourself or creating yourself. Illustration number 5. Spirituality versus religion. Now, this is a common one that's arising. Religion is belief in someone else's experience. So in that sense, Christianity would be a religion. In 1 John, John writes, the things I have seen and heard and tasted, I write to you so that my joy may be full. We are operating off of their experience so that we might have an experience. But spirituality is having your own experience. So that spirituality is an individualized, quote, religion, unquote. Whereas religion is institutional, traditional, and external authority. So that here, this is Habits of the Heart. It's a really well-known book on individualism, and he's interviewing Sheila Lawson, who's a young nurse, and he's asking her about her spirituality, her religion, and this is what she says: I believe in God. I'm not a religious fanatic. I can't remember the last time I went to church, because you don't have to go to church. You can experience, in fact, you come experience God better out in the woods than you would at church. My faith has carried me a long way. It is Sheilaism. This is what he points out.
What is that?
She's named her religion after herself.
Oh.
And that would be a strong form of individualized religion, just my own mode of voice, because she's following her conscience, her heart, her spirit, whatever you want to call it. And then when the author asked her, what is Sheilaism all about? She says, it's just try to love yourself and be gentle with yourself. I guess take care of each other. I think he would want us to take care of each other. So that would be the heart of her religious doctrine. And as many of you are aware, the category of spirituality is a fast-growing category. Religious people are shrinking in our culture. The category of spiritual people are increasing. So that if you look here, religious and spiritual, see, that's what we want to be. We want to be religious and spiritual because we hold on to an external authority, but we also want to experience our own personal walk with God, 59% to 48%. But the flip side, spiritual but not religious, not institutional. You don't have to go to a church. 19% to 27%. That's one of the faster growing 5-year Pew Research from the statistics that were taken. So what's the main difference? The main difference, spirituality occurs as a solitary experience of the divine, and you follow your heart.
Yeah.
Was that an amen?
I was told by the Disney movie.
The Disney movies.
Endlessly.
Yes.
No, I am God.
Oh,
I
then you
follow
are
my
God.
own heart.
Okay.
I am good. So I'm God.
Yeah, right.
That's what Disney is telling
What are
me.
you doing watching Disney movies?
My kids.
Oh, like when you were a kid.
When the
Okay,
kids
I'm
were
sorry.
little, not me. When the kids were little. When I watched Disney movie, I just heard that again and again.
Yeah.
I said, it's not. I cannot pinpoint it, but then
Yeah.
I think about it. Whoa, okay, now I know what it means.
What Ada's saying, there's a lot of truth into it. You should be careful the message that's embedded within the Disney movies. They are probably the prime medium into our young people's hearts of some of these aspects of individualism. It's not that they can't watch it, but you should talk about what they watch.
Yeah.
You should talk about what they watch. Thank you, Ada. So that once again, when I Google spirituality, it's a lone individual once again that is searching, praying, seeking, experiencing nature. And then my what am I? 6th illustration? Well, you can't leave out Disney. So Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid, if you've seen it, it's been so long ago, but it's been made into a play. And it's about a 16-year-old girl who is fascinated by the land of walking people with feet. And she exchanges the beauty of her voice for feet with the octopus. I forgot the name. Ursula. Yes, Ursula. And she wants to go to the land. And then I think she falls in love with the prince. And she has an argument with the father. And when I first watched it, I was amazed that the father capitulated to this daughter who was 16 years old to go and fall in love with someone that's not just even from her own species, but outside her species. It's quite a jump. And I thought, oh man, what's going on here? And then look what it said right at the end of the movie.
She really does love him, doesn't she, Sebastian?
Well, it's like I always say, Your Majesty, children got to be free to lead their own lives.
That is huge individualism
Always say that.
in its teaching. I'm going to stop it here. It goes on a little bit more, but she's actually free to now go and live in the land as well as to get married as well. That the overthrow of external authority for a 16-year-old girl in the issue of who to get married. That is strong. You know, it's flipped so much. Yeah, when I was dating my wife, I was so afraid of how her father would view me. Now, when my daughter brought the boy she was dating into our home, I was so afraid of what he would think of me because I wanted my daughter to. I ended up being afraid in both generations. Somewhere the flip had occurred. But now, you know, the level of freedom that is supposedly given now with the internet as well. I would not want to raise children in this generation. Very difficult to control or to oversee what they come across. Now, I find this interesting because I did not know that romance was a part of marriage until like the 1800s. You always thought, wow, you marry for love. And then we realized, wait a minute, that's a modern aspect. I don't want to say modern invention, but the strange history of marrying for love, the notion of love as the main reason to get married to someone is a relatively modern development. For most of recorded history, love was not considered. So only until about the mid-1800s or so, the radical idea of marrying for love. But the history of getting married because of love, summarized by this essay, that the unalienable right to happiness. See, CC wasn't that far off. The Constitution guarantees my individual right to pursue happiness. Was considered radical when it was drafted, blamed for inspiring young couples to put their own happiness ahead of the wishes of their disapproving parents. Ah. A history of. So in Chinese, the word for love doesn't apply to feelings between a husband and wife. The term is reserved for teens. When applied to older people, it is used in reference to affairs done in shame and secrecy. You're going to have to tell me whether this is accurate or not. The China Educational Tours, an organization that helps Westerners prepare for visits to China, provides the following information about Chinese marriages. It's okay for adolescents to have feelings of love, but when they reach marriageable age, then love is thought to be not only unnecessary, but probably even dangerous. Imagine telling that to your teenagers today. More useful and important to prepare for choosing a spouse will be a good education, having a job, and maybe owning an apartment. See, the teenagers, if you told them this, they would say, you sold out. You sold out to what marriage is all about. But that's only true for the last 150 years or so. Is this true about Chinese marriages? I'm sorry, Chinese word, not marriages. Just the Chinese word?
What year is that?
I think it's like 3 years old or something, 3 or 4. But it's okay. I'll ask the
You
Chinese
mean like
congregation.
the groom has to have a property?
Well, that part is still true even today, right? Yeah, but so love is not a necessary ingredient to, I mean, I'll stop there. I don't want to say anything about that. And then in European, among the nobility, marriages until recently were arranged for political and financial reasons. With little input from affected parties, the lucky couple was expected to occasionally hold their nose or close their eyes and make an effort to produce the next generation. Not about romantic love. So, at the end of the article, this is only in modern times, but not for vast majority of history. So Montaigne, he's a skeptic that wrote right before Descartes. So if there's such a thing as a good marriage, it is because it resembles friendship rather than love. And then this is what Montaigne wrote. A perfect marriage is a blind wife and a deaf husband. Because they can't see each other and they can't talk to each other. That's the perfect marriage. So that's the mindset. But the change that has occurred would be an illustration. That's my last illustration. So let me try out a definition. This is Hidden Worldview of Steve Wilkins, the belief that the individual is the primary reality and that our understanding of the universe, right here, it's that our interpretation of the universe and lifestyle should be centered in oneself. Individualism says that my unique interest goals should be pursued as much as possible by whatever means deemed proper. So that's a little bit of a lengthy definition. I like, and I agree with this, but I like the one that's coming up. And this is You Are Not Your Own by Alan. I think Alan Lobo is a literature professor down in Baylor. Right? Baylor? Great book. Second time going through, and this is what he says. This is the fundamental, sorry, that's a lie. This is the fundamental lie of modernity, that we are our own, that we belong to ourselves. That's the fundamental lie. If I had to define individualism with just 5 words, that we are our own. And then the rest of the book, because we belong to ourselves, now we are responsible for the meaning of our own life. That's why you're finding yourself. You're creating yourself because you own yourself. You have to create your own value systems, the rules by which you live, and your meaning in life. Everything arises from within, and you are only responsible for yourself, no one else. I would argue that individualism has penetrated the Christian church. There's a spirituality within the Christian church that's very similar to this type of language. And one of the four circles, we're going to look at it, therapeutic Christianity. Second point, almost done. Second point, the slogans of individualism. So it's almost like a little bit of a repeat, but I'll give you three phrases that might help. First, be yourself, right? That's one of the slogans. Be yourself, and that's authenticity. So we'll look at that as well. Authenticity is the virtue of our modern culture, so that it's not what you do as much as whether you are true to yourself in doing it. So that just be yourself, and this would be one of the three primary slogans of individualism. Now, I don't know if you've seen the movies or not. Clueless, this is one where you being yourself, and then Mean Girls, being yourself. So I picked these two because I got from a website that says 6 movies that promote good values for teens. Now, you kind of have to think, what is their perspective? Where are they coming from? Where it's determined to be good values? Well, it's from BeliefNet. BeliefNet started off as a interreligious network, but now it is exclusively Christian. And I thought, wait a minute, a Christian website promoting Clueless and Mean Girls as examples of good morals for teens, you're going to have to put that in quotes and talk about it, because it's not wrong to like yourself, but you're going to have to talk about it so that we understand what we mean by that. But getting it from, and there is no interpretation or back and forth as to how to understand what it means to like yourself within a Christian framework, because it's not the same as within a secular individualism or even a spiritual individualism context. Second one, like yourself. Be yourself, like yourself. This is the self-esteem, and the self-esteem movement is huge within our American culture. So that I picked on Whitney Houston, I'll pick on BTS. But one of their primary themes of the songs they sing is love yourself or like yourself. So the songs that they sing. So I try to get the lyrics out, but half their lyrics in Korean, and my Korean is not that good. So, but just trust me when I say it's one of their major themes. This is Britney Spears. I went through a couple of her journal entries that she was making public for her fans. But at the very top, this is her logo. Love yourself. That's how it starts. And then her one of her postings says right here, she's going to quit the business for a little bit, and get reoriented. As I said earlier, my priorities haven't changed, and I'm going to be focusing on 3 areas of my life for my immediate future: myself, my husband, Kevin, and then starting a family. And I thought, wow, that's kind of flip, right? We have, what do? We have joy, J-O-Y, Jesus, others, yourself, and your others last. But here it's flip, because unless you like yourself and true to yourself, you don't have the basis by which you can have a relationship with her husband or starting a family. So that when my girls played Little League soccer, and you guys know, they didn't keep score. I had the time when I went to watch them play because I kept score in my head. It's supposed to be a scoreless, they're just having fun. But for myself, you can't help it because I grew up in a generation where you keep track of scores. So that they're given trophies, participation trophies. So, good luck next time. Here you go. Here's a prize. You tried. Or if you had fun, you're a winner. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but the question is, what framework is this being done in? Because when I was little, I used to play Pee-wee football. For 2 years, I played Pee-wee football, and if you were not the championship team, and if you didn't get elected to the All-Star, you went home empty-handed. That's what I learned, right? If you don't win, you go home empty-handed. But not the new generation. We do it in terms of self-esteem and academics. So that near the top, 23% of American students believe that they're 13 to 17 believe that they're near the top, 29% believe they're average, 37% believe that 89% of American students believe that they're average or above. Somewhere along the line, somebody's been drinking the Kool-Aid. It does not add up.
No one fails.
No one
Fail.
No one, yeah. Well, in fact, no one really fails, because if you fail a student in a school, their parents are going to be right by your doorstep the next day.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring advocates alongside them so that you are not going, it's not worth the fight to give someone a failure. So that the 4-year university and college, the cumulative average GPA has risen. Every single year it has gone up. In fact, for those who are teaching in schools, you are aware of this. When I was teaching at Moody as well, you could not give a student a C.
No.
You can't give a student a C, because for them that's failure. You have to give them A's and B's. At one point, we got emails from the administration saying, too many of you are giving out A's. It's losing its value. We don't know how to determine, the student ranking, because everyone is getting A's and B's. So the Montgomery County's grade inflation should be a wake-up call. At some point, the grade should reflect where the student actually is, rather than it being political or anything else. 48%, 2004 college freshmen said they had the average in high school. Now, this is not how they think they did. This is actually 48% got A's. Only 18% in 1968 actually had an A average in high school. That's a lot of jump. While SAT scores have decreased over this same time period, because there is an assumption that by building up our students' self-esteem, we're helping them to live a better life. Perhaps not, but it is filtering into a sense of individualism as we are trying to define. Lastly, believe in yourself, right? Like yourself, be yourself, believe in yourself. In fact, if you took most of the movies our kids watch these days, it probably falls into one of those 3 categories. So that this is the Army. Yeah, you guys seen this, right? World War II. And I want you for the U.S. Army. This is the primary, join the Army, And then Army Strong, which is not bad. So if you join the Army, they will infuse a level of strength within you that you may not have before. And there's strong, then there's Army Strong, right? Mine taught me what I'm made of. So, these are ways in which we become trained to contribute to the military force, and then starts getting a little bit more individualistic. These are more recent ones. Be all you can be, still not explicitly individualistic, but it does appeal to that. And then the final one, an army of one. I'm still trying to figure out what this means. And I want to be an army of one when I'm going into battle. I want a lot of people around me. But the army of one seems to focus a little bit more and more on the sense of the self. And then this is In Sync in Sesame Street. And this was pretty well known because they sang one of their songs, and one of their songs, you can try what you need to try. No one should question why. Believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. Ooh. I don't know how else to say it, but just believe in yourself. I remember a while back, who was it? Miley Cyrus. Didn't she go into an elementary classroom and say one time, not all of you can be presidents? And it became national news because she was undermining the concept of believing in yourself. But we all believe, this is what we want to infuse upon our kids, that if you try hard enough, believe in yourself, you can succeed. Perhaps not, but it's framed within a context of individualism. That is it. And I'm glad I only have 2 points here. So just trying to get a feel for it. And then next week, we'll look at where did it come from? It came from Christianity. We are the producers of individualism. And then we'll look at how that affects sharing the gospel to this culture. Okay, next week. Any comments or thoughts or personal illustrations? You're more than welcome to share. If not, yes.
I guess you're familiar with the work of Erickson, psychoanalytic. Yeah. So he had this personality theory where people had basically they develop an identity, and in the teenage year they tend to be exploring. Right. They tend to be looking at these, whether they're left or right and everything. They explore, And then finally, they reach what they call achievement. I think that's strictly a Western phenomenon, because he also described other routes that you take. One of them is foreclosure. He called it foreclosure, where you didn't choose your identity; it was chosen for you. Right, and that would be more like in a traditional society. They choose what your profession will be, and because you don't have that opportunity to explore.
That's a great point. I remember Elder Core saying one time when he was teaching that Western societies are known for more their individualism. Eastern societies tend to be more communal. So similar. It was interesting when I was looking at the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights (UDHR). When it was formulated mainly by Western framework. And when Asia and Africa saw that, they reacted because it was so individualistic rights determined without individual rights being constrained by your communal context, so that there needs to be some type of a balance. Obviously, we don't want to eliminate the individual, but you cannot eliminate the group context. You cannot walk the Christian faith by yourself. It requires a body, not just synchronically, the churches over here, but diachronically, the churches that came before you. We need them as well. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have something to share. I'm not sure if it's relevant, but I read an article one time, and I actually asked a friend. So they said that in India, when the husband and the wife passed away, the husband actually married the sister. And then it was kind of an interesting article about that. And then I was talking to actually a friend of mine who's also Indian, and she shared with me that she actually was also in an arranged marriage. And she said that in a sense, they found that in India, that those type of marriages last much longer.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Because, and then that it was not uncommon that if the wife passed away, they just married a relative.
Interesting. Is that to stay in the family?
I suppose so, to keep the children.
Right.
So that they.
Reminds me a little bit the Levitical law. The Levitical law where
When the husband died.
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you. And I have heard as well their marriage lasts longer.
That's exactly what it is. Because if you marry for love, you might think that if your love is not a burning passion all the time, you might think there's something wrong with my marriage.
Yes.
Whereas if you don't marry for that, you're not seeking perfection.
Right. Let's tone it slightly down for the unmarried single people here. We may not have any of them next week. I'm just kidding.
No, I was going to say that what you presented is an example of kind of like taking the truth that's taught to us in the Bible, and in fact just focusing on one part of it.
Right.
And for us, it's kind of like we want to play both games, the communal and individual game, at the top of the league, right?
Yeah.
So we value individuals, but if you just do that, then you miss out on something else at the other end. So how do you sort of like do both at the top of the game? For us, I think it's a challenge, and maybe you can share your insights on this thing that we are considering today, which is individualism. We are all unique, and so how do we think of ourselves as individuals and just be, all that we can be, God has intended us to be? Because we cannot chuck that, because we go on the other end, you run into, the problems of being just completely tied to your community, to define your individual, yourself in relation to that. And that, can be suffocating in its own way.
Right. No, that's perfect. Sharing the gospel into this culture, you don't want to mold your message so that it emphasizes the part that seems to connect and leave out the other half of the formula. The whole story has to be told. And so we'll keep talking about this as we go along, as we look at the gospel and what it means and how do we balance love others as you have loved yourself. And you're right, it's taking part of the truth and blowing it up.
Yeah, I think it's all about boundary, right? Because of this basically two extreme. And in ancient China, there's a small story about a boy, maybe 6 years old, and he was presenting two pair, one big one small one. So he gave the pair to his younger brother. That's famous story. This is called 孔融让梨, and later on he became